The wind cut straight down the San Pedro Valley like a blade, dry and mean, carrying a thin dusting of winter snow that did not belong in this kind of country. The snow clung in weak patches to the hard ground, just enough to show a trail of stumbling footprints. Whoever made them had been running on nothing but grit and prayer. Ree saw the first woman fall before he even heard her. She dropped to her knees near the frozen riverbank, her thin gray dress offering no protection, her hands sinking into wet snow as if the earth itself was pulling her down. A second woman collapsed beside her a heartbeat later, trying to reach out, trying to hold on, and failing. Ree stopped a few steps away. His pistol hung heavy at his hip, not because he meant to use it, but because he never went anywhere without it. Folks in the territory still whispered his name with the old word they used for men like him: Gunslinger. The kind that survives shootouts and bad decisions. The kind that walks away before trouble turns into a grave. He had learned that hesitation could get a man killed. But he had learned something worse, too. Sometimes stepping in could cost more than walking away. The last time he got involved, he lost his wife and his little boy. Not in a clean fight, not in a fair one. It had been over a piece of land and a few lies, the kind of fight men start when they want what isn't theirs. Ree had lived, but living did not feel like winning. After that, he had chosen this valley because it was empty. No town close by, no neighbors knocking, no one asking questions. Now the valley watched him stand over two dying strangers. The younger woman's face was pale and tight with cold, her lips cracked. The older one had sharp eyes even as she shook, her body angling like a shield in front of her sister. Ree could see the fear in her, but he could also see control. She was not the kind to beg. She was the kind to bite. Ree looked at their footprints, leading into the open land, then back at the river, then at the hard sky above. The wind kept pushing. The cold kept stealing. He cursed under his breath, not at them, but at himself. Because he already knew what he was going to do. He moved fast. He crouched, slid an arm under the younger one, and lifted her like she weighed nothing. She was light in a way that scared him. The older sister tried to stand on her own, swaying stubborn as a fence post. Ree grabbed her elbow before she hit the ground again. She flinched at his touch, but she did not pull away. His cabin was a small thing, built for survival, not comfort. Timber walls packed with earth, a low roof, a single room that smelled of smoke, leather, and old loneliness. It sat far from any road that mattered. His cattle grazed on thin pasture. Water came from the river when the river decided to give it. Inside that cabin, everything had been measured and quiet for years. A second chair rested against the wall, never used, never moved. On a shelf sat a small wooden toy, carved rough by a father's hands, dusty because touching it hurt too much. Ree carried the younger woman to the hearth and laid her down near the warmth. Her hair was tangled, her cheeks raw from the cold. Even unconscious, there was something strong in her face, like she had decided long ago not to break. The older sister stayed on her feet, though barely. She watched Ree's hands, his shoulders, his belt where the pistol sat. When he took a step, she shifted, placing herself between him and the one on the floor. Her dress was thin and worn from travel. Her hands were chapped and red, but her eyes were steady. Ree did not ask their names. He did not ask where they came from. In this land, questions could pull trouble in like blood pulls wolves. He only fed the fire, set a pot of water to warm, and moved with the calm of a man who had seen too many people bleed out. The younger woman's skin was cold, then strangely hot. Fever. Ree had seen fevers burn through people faster than bullets. He soaked a cloth in warm water and touched her forehead, careful and slow. He kept the heat steady, not too fast, not too harsh. Out here, even help could kill if it came the wrong way. The older sister watched every move without a word. She did not thank him. She did not relax. Her eyes stayed open like a guard dog's. Ree took a seat by the fireplace, giving them space but staying close enough to act. His pistol stayed at his side. Habit, not threat. A man who lived alone could not afford to forget what the dark could bring. Hours passed. The wind slammed the cabin walls. The beams creaked as the heat worked into the wood. Ree's thoughts tried to drag him backward, to that other winter, to a night when his wife had looked at him like she trusted him with her whole life. To the sound he still heard in dreams, the kind a man never forgets. Sometime after midnight, the younger woman stirred. It was small at first, a twitch of her fingers, a faint sound caught in her throat. Ree stood up right away, moving slow so he would not startle them. The older sister's body tightened. Her hands came up, ready, like she might fight him with bare nails if she had to. The younger woman's eyes opened, hazy and unfocused in the firelight. She found Ree's face and held it. Not afraid. Just tired. Just measuring him the way he was measuring her. She swallowed hard, then forced a single word past dry lips. Why? Her English was rough, but the question was clear. Ree did not answer fast. Fast answers were usually lies. He looked at the fire for a moment, at the simple truth sitting in front of him. Because you were still breathing, he said. The words landed plain and heavy. The younger woman blinked, as if that was enough. Her eyes softened, then slid shut again as sleep pulled her back. Her breathing sounded steadier now, less broken. The older sister did not stop watching Ree, but the tightness in her shoulders eased just a little. Not trust, not yet, but something close to it. Morning came pale and cold. The snow had mostly melted into dark mud, leaving the valley looking bruised. Ree stepped outside, checked his cattle, walked to the riverbank, and returned like he always did. Routine was his anchor. But this morning the cabin felt different, like his quiet life had been forced to make room. When he entered, the fire had been tended. The older sister was kneeling by the hearth, adding wood like she belonged there. She glanced up and gave him a short nod, not gratitude, but acknowledgement. The younger woman sat propped on folded blankets, eyes open and alert now. The fever had broken, leaving her weak but clear. Ree set a bowl of warm broth on the table and stepped back. The older sister carried it to her, careful and steady. The younger woman ate slow, like she was teaching her body how to accept help. No one spoke much that day. Ree worked with his hands, fixing the door hinge, splitting wood, sharpening a knife by the window. The sounds filled the cabin in a way that kept memories from talking too loud. Late in the afternoon, the younger woman finally broke the silence. "You live far from other people," she said. "Far enough," Ree answered. She nodded, eyes moving over the room, over the second chair, over the small toy on the shelf that he pretended not to see. "It is quiet here," she said. Ree's jaw tightened. Quiet was the point. The words hung between them. The younger woman studied his face like she understood more than he had said. Outside, the wind shifted, and the valley's silence felt like it was listening. And Ree realized something else, too, something that sent a cold prickle up his neck. The trader who usually came through every 10 days had not shown up. In this country, that kind of absence did not happen for no reason. The next morning felt too quiet, like the valley was holding its breath. Ree went through his chores the same as always, but his eyes kept drifting to the empty trail that led in from the north. The trader should have been here by now. That man never missed a trip unless something had gone wrong. Ree did not say it out loud, but he felt it in his bones. When a regular man vanished from the road, it usually meant one thing. Someone was talking, someone was moving, trouble was traveling faster than the wind. Inside the cabin, the two women changed the air in ways Ree could not ignore. Leanne kept to the edges of the room, always close enough to her sister to step in, always watching Ree like he might turn into a different man without warning. She moved quietly but with purpose, like someone who had slept with fear for too long to ever fully rest. Mai was weaker than she wanted to be. She hated the slow steps and the shaking hands, but she did not complain. She tried to sit up straight, tried to hold herself with pride, even when her face tightened from pain. Ree noticed that kind of strength because it looked like the kind he had once admired in his wife. He set food out without asking if they wanted it. He filled the water bucket and left it where Leanne could reach it. He laid out a spare blanket by the hearth and stepped away like his help was nothing. Leanne did not thank him. She did not soften. But she started doing small things that meant she was thinking, not just guarding. She swept the dirt floor with a bundle of dry grass. She hung wet cloth near the fire so it could dry. She studied the shelves where Ree kept his dried herbs and little jars of lard and salt, as if she was memorizing the room in case she needed to survive there alone. On the second day, Mai managed to stand without leaning on the wall. She wobbled, caught herself, and forced her chin up. Ree looked away on purpose so she would not think he was watching her fail. But he saw it anyway, and something in his chest stirred. Something he did not want. That evening, Mai sat at the table while Leanne watched from the corner. Ree set a small bowl of beans in front of Mai and a piece of cornbread beside it. Mai touched the bowl like it might disappear if she moved too fast. "You are a rancher," she said. Ree paused. "Something like that." "You live alone," Mai said, not as a question. Ree kept his voice flat. "Yes." Mai's eyes drifted to the second chair against the wall, then to the small wooden toy on the shelf. She did not point, she did not ask, but her gaze landed there long enough for Ree to feel exposed. Leanne stepped closer, placing herself near Mai without touching her. "We will not stay long," she said to Ree. Ree met her eyes. "I wouldn't expect you to." Leanne held his gaze like she was trying to decide if he meant it. Then she looked away first, which told Ree she had noticed more in him than he wanted anyone to see. The days moved in a steady rhythm after that. Mai gained strength little by little. She insisted on helping, even when Ree told her she did not need to. She sorted beans by the table. She mended a tear in Ree's shirt with neat stitches that made it look new again. When Ree tried to take the shirt back, she held it out calmly. "I know I do not have to," she said. "I still will." Ree did not argue. He understood the need behind it. Out here, a person stayed human by being useful, by giving something back. He had lived by that rule all his life. On the fourth day, Leanne asked about the herbs. Ree showed her without pride, without acting like a teacher. He told her which ones helped cough, which ones could lower fever, which ones could calm an upset stomach. Leanne listened like every word mattered, her face steady, her mind sharp. "You know these things," she said. "A man learns what keeps him alive," Ree answered. Leanne nodded once. It was not approval. It was agreement. That night, Ree sat by the fire after the women had settled. His eyes kept drifting to the door. He kept hearing the silence outside, the kind of silence that came before hooves. He told himself he was imagining it, but he had survived too long to ignore his instincts. Near midnight, Mai spoke softly from her blankets. "You still did not tell me." Ree looked over. "Tell you what?" "Why, you helped us," she said. Ree stared at the fire. He wanted to end the talk there. He had built his life around not speaking about the past. Words brought memories, and memories brought pain, and pain made a man careless. Mai waited without pushing, her eyes steady in the dim light. Ree let out a slow breath. "I stayed once," he said. Mai did not move. "I stayed when leaving would have been safer," Ree continued. "I told myself it was the right thing. I was wrong. By the time I understood, there was nothing left to save." He stopped. No names, no details, just a truth shaped like a wound. Mai looked at him as if she understood that kind of loss without needing the whole story. "Staying is not always wrong," she said. Ree gave a short, bitter sound. "Sometimes it is." Mai shook her head slowly. "And leaving is not always safe." Her words hit him in a way he did not expect. Not comfort, not pity, just a plain truth spoken like a fact. For the first time in years, Ree felt seen without being judged. It unsettled him more than fear ever had. The next day, Ree started pulling away. He stayed outside longer. He spoke less. He worked until his hands ached, as if hard work could keep the cabin from changing him. Mai noticed. She did not chase him. She did not ask him to be kinder. She simply watched and waited, like someone who had learned that pushing a wounded animal only made it bite. Leanne walked the edge of the property that afternoon. moving through the tall grasses with careful steps. When she returned, her face was tight and serious. "They know," she said. Reed did not pretend he did not understand. "Someone talked." Quote. Leanne nodded. "Someone always talks." Mai sat at the table, quiet, her hands folded. She did not ask who knew. She did not ask what would happen. Her calm was not ignorance. It was readiness. Ree checked his rifle, then set it back down. He checked his pistol, then left it where it always sat. He did not like living in fear, but he also did not like lying to himself. 2 days passed with the trail still empty. No trader, no friendly wave, no news. Only wind and silence. On the third morning, Ree stepped outside before sunrise and saw a dark line far off against the pale land. At first, it looked like shadows. Then, it moved. He narrowed his eyes, listening. Hooves. Not one rider. Several. They were coming straight toward his cabin. The riders came in slow, like they had all the time in the world. 4 men, spaced out just enough to show they knew what they were doing. They did not ride like travelers looking for water. They rode like men who expected doors to open for them. Ree stood in the open before they reached the cabin. He did not hide behind his walls. He did not reach for his pistol either. He let them see him plain. A lone man on open ground, calm as stone. Behind him, the cabin door opened. Leanne stepped out first, placing herself where she could see every angle. Mai followed, staying in the doorway, her shoulders squared despite the cold. Ree did not look back, but he felt their presence like heat at his spine. The lead man dismounted with a smoothness that showed practice. He was not big, but he carried himself like the land belonged to him. His coat was clean, his boots too polished for a man who did honest work. He smiled as if this was a friendly visit, but his eyes stayed cold. "Ree," he said, drawing the name out like it was a memory. "Didn't expect to find you with company." Ree kept his voice flat. "This is my land." The man's smile widened just a little. "Depends who you ask." Ree knew the face, Marcus Thorne, a man who made money by leaning on weaker people, a man who spoke smooth and acted rough. Thorne did not need to point a gun to feel dangerous. He used other men for that. Thorne glanced past Ree, his eyes landing on the 2 women. His smile faded like a candle in wind. "There's talk," Thorne said. "Talk of strangers in the valley. Folks don't like strangers." Ree let the silence sit a moment. They nearly froze to death. Thorne shrugged like that meant nothing. "That's sad, sure. But trouble follows people who don't belong, and when trouble shows up, it spreads." Leanne took 1 step forward, not close enough to threaten, but close enough to be seen. "We will leave if we must," she said. Her English was clear, her voice steady, but not because we are told to disappear. Thorne's eyes narrowed. He looked at Ree again. "So you're taking responsibility for them?" Quote. Ree felt the old instinct rise in him, the one that said keep things quiet, keep your head down, let men like Thorne move on to easier prey. That instinct had kept Ree alive for years, but it had also kept him alone. "Yes," Ree said. The word landed heavy. Even Ree felt it, like a door closing behind him. Thorne studied him, then gave a slow nod. "You know how this looks. 2 Chinese women on your land. No trader coming through. Folks will start making up stories." Ree did not blink. "Let them." Thorne's voice hardened. "This isn't town, Ree. There ain't law out here the way you want it. There's only what men agree to." Ree held his ground. "Then I'm telling you what I agree to." Thorne glanced back at his men, then forward again. "If they leave quiet, this goes away." Leanne's jaw tightened. Mai stayed still, watching, her eyes calm but sharp. Ree shook his head once. "They stay." For a moment, the valley went silent in a way that felt unnatural. Even the wind seemed to pause. Thorne's smile returned, but it was thin now, like a knife edge. "You're choosing sides." Ree's voice stayed even. "No. I'm choosing responsibility." Thorne's eyes turned hard. He did not argue. He did not shout. That was what made him more dangerous. Men like Thorn did not waste words when they knew the fight was not over. He mounted his horse. "This ain't finished," he said softly, and then he rode off, his men following. Ree watched them leave until they were just dark dots on the pale land. He did not relax. A retreat was not peace. It was a promise. When Ree turned back toward the cabin, Leanne was already packing. Mai saw it too. "Leanne," she said quietly. Leanne's hands did not stop. "We cannot stay here," she answered. "Not if it brings him trouble." Mai's voice tightened. "We did not ask for this trouble." Leanne looked at Ree, then back to Mai. "Trouble does not care what we ask." Ree stepped inside, the warmth of the cabin hitting him like a wave. He hated how normal it felt to stand there while the women prepared to run again. "You don't have to go," Ree said. Leanne paused. "You think Thorn will let this rest?" Ree did not lie. "No." Mai looked up. "Then why did you say we stay?" Quote. Ree's throat tightened. He thought of his wife, of his son, of the way he had told himself he was doing the right thing back then, and how wrong it had all gone. "Because I won't watch you die," he said. "Not when I'm standing right there." Quote. Leanne stared at him, measuring him like she had since the first night. Then she set one item down, slowly, like she was reconsidering. That evening, the wind turned sharp again. The sky went dark early, heavy with cold. Ree kept his rifle close, but he did not sit by the window like a frightened man. He moved around the cabin, checking the latch, stacking wood, keeping busy, because waiting could make a man go crazy. Near midnight, a distant sound carried through the valley. Not hooves, a shout. Ree froze, listening. It came again, faint but urgent, like someone calling from far off. Leanne heard it too. She grabbed her pack as if she expected the shout to turn into boots at the door. Mai sat up, her eyes wide but steady. Ree stepped outside. The cold hit him hard. The moon was thin, the land dim. Then he saw a moving shape at the edge of his property. A rider, swaying in the saddle, horse lathered and stumbling. Ree jogged forward and caught the man before he fell. It was one of Thorn's men. His face was pale, his eyes wild with fear. "It's Thorn," the man gasped. He rode south to prove a point, like a fool. His horse slipped on the rocks. "He's hurt bad. He might die." Ree stared at him, feeling something like anger rise. Thorn had come to threaten him, to scare him into giving the women up. And now Thorn was lying out there in the cold, broken, helpless. Ree walked back to the cabin, the man limping behind him. Leanne stood at the door, her body tense. Mai was behind her, watching Ree's face like she could read what he was thinking. "You don't owe him anything," Mai said quietly. Ree nodded once. "I know." He pulled on his coat and reached for his gloves. Leanne's eyes narrowed. "Then why are you going?" Ree paused at the door. The answer came without effort, like it had been waiting inside him for years. "Because I won't live by leaving things undone anymore," he said. He took his horse and rode into the night. The valley swallowed him quick. The wind kept biting. The trail was hard to follow, but Ree found it. Because men like him learned to track signs in darkness. He found Marcus Thorn near a low rise where the rocks broke the land into rough teeth. Thorn's horse lay on its side, breathing hard. Thorn himself was pinned in a bad way, one leg twisted, blood dark against the pale ground. When Thorn saw Ree, his face twisted with shock, then shame. "You," Thorn rasped. Ree slid off his horse and knelt, checking the man's breathing, the injury, the cold already working at his skin. Ree worked in silence, cutting leather, shifting weight carefully, binding the leg as best he could. Thorn tried to speak again. "Why are you doing this?" Quote. Ree did not look at him. "Because you're still breathing." Thorn's eyes widened, hearing his own words thrown back at him, plain and sharp. Ree got Thorn onto his horse with effort, supporting him, keeping him from slipping. Then he led the animal back toward the cabin, step by step through the cold dark. By the time they reached the cabin, Dawn was creeping into the sky. Leanne and Mai were waiting at the door. Mai's eyes went straight to Ree, then to Thorn, slumped and half-conscious. She did not look surprised. She looked like she understood exactly what kind of man Ree was becoming, whether he wanted it or not. Ree helped Thorn inside, laid him down near the hearth, and began to work again, steady and focused. But deep in his chest, Ree knew something had changed that could never go back. Because saving Thorn was not mercy, it was a message, and the whole territory was about to hear it. Marcus Thorn did not wake up gentle. When the heat from Ree's fire finally pulled him back from the edge, his first breath came with a groan that sounded more like anger than pain. His eyes opened and went straight to Ree, then to the cabin walls, then to the two Chinese women standing nearby. Shame flashed across his face for a second, and then it hardened into something ugly, like he wanted to turn his weakness into blame. Ree did not let him. He kept working the same way he always did, quiet hands, steady pressure on the bandage, a cup of warmed water held to Thorn's lips without kindness and without cruelty. Leanne stayed near the door with her pack close, her body tense like a bowstring. Mai knelt by the hearth and watched the wound like she was learning how to help without getting in the way. Thorn tried to sit up, then fell back with a sharp breath. The movement sent pain through his leg, and the sound that came out of him was not a proud man's sound. His eyes widened as he realized how badly he was hurt. "You should have let me freeze," Thorn muttered. Ree finally looked at him. "Maybe I should have, but I didn't." Thorn's jaw worked like he had more words, but none of them came out clean. The cold outside still had teeth, and Thorn knew it. If Ree had not brought him back, he would be stiff on the rocks by now. Before sunrise was fully up, hoofbeats came again. Leanne's head snapped toward the sound. Her hand moved close to the knife she kept hidden in her dress. Mai's shoulders tightened, but she did not run. Ree stepped outside first, slow and open, and let the men see him in the light. Two riders came into view, both of them from Thorn's group. They stopped short when they saw the cabin, then dismounted like men who expected trouble and found something they did not understand. "Where is he?" one of them called. "In here," Ree answered. The men followed him inside, and the moment they saw Thorn lying near the hearth, their faces shifted. Relief came first, then confusion. The lead rider stared at Ree as if he could not make the pieces fit. "You brought him back," the rider said. Ree did not nod like it was an achievement. He was pinned. He would have died. The second rider glanced at Mai and Leanne, then quickly looked away. He had ridden here thinking Ree was the problem. Now he was standing in Ree's warmth while Ree kept their leader alive. Thorn stared at his men, and Ree saw it then. Thorn knew the truth had turned on him. If he admitted Ree saved him, his threat lost power. If he lied, he would be lying in front of men who had watched Ree carry him in. Thorn swallowed hard. "Get me to town," he said, rough and low. Ree shook his head. "Not today. His leg will not survive another ride in this cold." Quote. Thorn's eyes flashed. "You don't give orders to me." Ree's voice stayed calm. "I'm not giving orders. I'm telling you what is true." For a long moment, nobody moved. The fire crackled. The wind pushed the cabin walls. Leanne stood still as a statue. Mai kept her eyes on Ree, like she needed to know if he would bend. Then Thorn did something Ree did not expect. He looked away. "Fine," Thorn muttered. "One day." The riders exchanged a look. They were seeing it too. Thorn, the man who always acted untouchable, was trapped on Ree's floor and could do nothing about it. That day, Ree kept Thorn alive. He kept the bandages clean. He forced Thorn to drink. He spoke only when needed. Mai helped without being asked, warming cloth, bringing herbs, holding the water steady. Leanne watched every moment, but slowly, her shoulders lowered a little. She was not trusting Ree because he had power. She was trusting him because he used his power in a way that did not scare her. By the second night, Thorn's fever rose. He shook and sweated, his face pale in the firelight. The men who followed him looked frightened now, because they knew if Thorn died here, they would be left with nothing but blame. Mai moved closer to Ree and spoke softly. "The fever is trying to take him." Ree nodded. "I know." Mai pointed to the herbs Ree had shown Leanne. "Use that one," she said. "The bitter one." Ree did not argue. He used it. He watched Thorn's breathing. He waited. Near dawn, Thorn's fever broke. The air in the cabin changed, like a storm passing. The riders let out breaths they did not know they were holding. Thorn lay still, weak and quiet, his pride too exhausted to stand up. That afternoon, the trader finally came down the trail. He stopped when he saw extra horses, his eyes sharp with suspicion. Ree stepped out, met him on the path, and spoke low. The trader listened, then looked past Ree at the cabin. He did not ask loud questions. Men who lived in hard country learned when to keep their voices down. By sundown, the trader rode on, and Ree knew the story would move faster than any rider. A story always did. But this time, it was not the story Thorn wanted. The next morning, Thorn was strong enough to sit up. His men helped him, careful and quiet. He looked at Ree like he hated him for what had happened, not because Ree hurt him, but because Ree had taken away the weapon Thorn used most, fear. Thorn's eyes drifted to Mai and Leanne. "They're the reason," he said, trying to bring the old threat back. Ree did not flinch. "No, your pride is the reason. You chased a rumor to prove you own the valley. You almost died for it." Thorn's mouth tightened. He wanted to deny it, but the truth sat right there, wrapped around his leg in Ree's bandages. Thorn finally spoke through clenched teeth. "You saved me." "It was not gratitude. It was surrender," Ree nodded once. "Now you'll leave." Thorn held his stare, and Ree could see something crack behind his eyes. Not kindness, not change, but defeat. He had come here to make Ree give the women up. Instead, he was leaving alive because Ree would not walk away from a dying man. Thorn's men helped him onto a horse. As they rode off, one of the riders looked back at Ree, then at the cabin, then forward again like he was deciding what kind of man he wanted to follow from now on. When the dust settled, Leanne began packing again. Mai watched her sister's hands move with the same steady purpose as before. "We are safe now," Mai said. Leanne's eyes were gentle for the first time. "Safe is never forever," she answered, "but you have a chance here." Mai's throat tightened. "You are leaving me." Leanne shook her head. "I am leaving you with a choice." "That is different." Ree stood by the table and did not speak, because he knew this was not his moment to lead. Leanne had carried Mai through fear and hunger and cold. If Leanne was letting go now, it was because she believed Mai could stand. On the third morning after Thorn left, the cold wind softened. The sky turned clean and bright. Leanne shouldered her pack and stepped outside. She paused at the door and looked at Ree. "You chose correctly," she said. Ree nodded. "So did you." Quote, Leanne gave Mai one last look, then walked into the valley without drama, without tears, without needing anyone to follow her. She became smaller in the distance until she was just a moving dot under a wide American sky. Mai stayed at the doorway until her sister was gone. When she finally turned back, her eyes were wet but steady. "I will stay," Mai said to Ree, "but not because I need shelter." Ree's chest tightened. He did not want to beg her. He did not want to trap her with promises. He only wanted to tell the truth. "I won't keep you," he said. "I won't own you. If you stay, you stand beside me." Mai nodded once. "That is why I stay." That evening, Mai pulled the second chair to the table. The sound of its legs on the dirt floor filled the cabin like thunder. Ree watched it move and felt something rise in him that he had kept buried for years. He did not stop her. Later, when the fire burned low, Mai reached up to the shelf and picked up the small wooden toy. She held it carefully, like it mattered. Ree's voice came out rough. "That was my boy's." Mai did not pry. She only nodded and set it back down, closer to the hearth where the light could touch it. Then she sat in the second chair and began mending leather, her hands steady, her presence quiet. Winter did not end all at once, but it loosened, day by day. The river ran clearer. The grass lifted its head. The valley stayed hard, but it no longer felt empty. Ree still woke before sunrise. He still worked until dusk. But now, when he opened the cabin door, he did not step into silence alone. He stepped into a life he had chosen, not because it was safe, but because he was done running from what mattered. And in a place that had tried to kill two sisters in the cold, a home had taken root through simple, stubborn choices that did not turn away,